I think one of the greatest gifts I was ever given very early on in my life was in gymnastics, where my coach told me that I had to fail and fall literally flat on my face 1,000 times before I would ever, get one skill right. And he taught me at a very young age just this gift of he celebrated failure. He was like, if you're not failing, you're not trying. And you have to fail and you have to try in order to ever be good at this.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. This is Dr. Mona, and if you're tuning in, you are watching this on our YouTube channel. Remember, if you love the podcast, if you love this channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up sign on all the videos that you love so I can continue to bring you amazing conversations. And today is someone I'm really excited to have on the show. I like to call them my friends now, which seems crazy because they're sort of celebrities, and that's awesome. It is Olympic gold medalist Shawn Johnson East and former NFL long snapper Andrew East, and authors of their new book, The Courage to Commit, which comes out June 9th, so it's out now. And they're coming on to talk about commitment, work ethic, and all of the things that make them them. And I'm just so excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
Good to see you again, Doc.
Yeah. And yes, we're friends.
We are friends.
I feel like we're together a lot now.
Yeah. Like for anyone who's not familiar, so Shawn and Andrew have their own show. I've been on their show talking about parenting tips and all the things that we do as parents. And then myself and Shawn have worked together with Befortis, or the RSV campaign. And it just so happened that that's how we finally physically met. And it just felt like talking to an old friend. So for anyone who's like listening and are like, are they exactly how they are in real life? I can tell you that from meeting Shawn, I know Andrew's probably the same, but Shawn is exactly who you see online, which is really awesome. When you meet someone and you're like, there's no fake aura being put on here. This is who you are. I love to see it. So happy to have you guys on and talk about this next endeavor, which is a book you wrote together.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I would say Shawn's cooler in person, but maybe that's
You're
just my
cooler
own.
in person.
I could be biased, but
you're just like a human golden retriever.
Oh, I sense that from the videos that you all do. By the way, I love the blend of parenting, but also relationship. You really have hit that sort of 360 on like what happens in a home in a very realistic way. And it does seem like he has golden retriever energy.
Yeah.
So I love. So tell me more about this book. Like I think Shawn, you have had books that you've written before, but Andrew, this is your first book. So
right.
Tell me what made you guys decide to write this book, The Courage to Commit, and how that process has been writing it together.
It's a journey, as it sounds like you're about to find out. It's really fun. It takes about 3 years to do a book, as we've learned. And what's really fun about that time period is you are able to think about and start collecting and curating all the stories and thoughts over like a really long period of time. You kind of see the world through the lens of the book for that amount of time. And so then, we had this process of journaling or making notes and then trying to figure out, does that actually fit or not? And when you have 3 years to do that, I feel like we have a pretty comprehensive exploration of this concept of committing, which has been really fun. And, we're not writing this from a book of expertise as very much as students. And so to like, go through this and try to learn about ourselves and have a ton of conversations, read all the maybe correlative books that are already out there. It's just like a really fun process that is unlike anything else you've done before, because when a book's printed, that's kind of like a very final thing. And it's not editable at that point. Unlike, we could probably go back and edit this podcast or
exactly,
or somehow remove an Instagram video if you need to. And it's like a book's pretty permanent. So it's daunting, but I think it calls for a certain amount of excellence. So I love the process.
Oh, I love to hear it.
Yeah.
I was just going to say it was a fascinating process writing it together. I had written a book or two before this, and so I was familiar with the process solo, but doing it together was fascinating because we have a shared belief in the topic, which is commitment and how it works in our life, but we have two completely different voices in how we relate to the topic and how we process it, and trying to figure out how to put that into a book for the readers was very interesting. We got to a point where we said, I don't think it's possible to blend them. So we actually brought in a third writer And so the book is comprised of like us and then Jimmy Sunny, which is the third writer. And so you have a chapter that kind of shows Andrew's face and it's Andrew's voice. And then you see my face and my voice, and we have separate text to give very different dynamics. And then you have Jimmy coming in showing a lot of statistics and research and the data that kind of backs both. And it was a really fun process trying to piece that puzzle together. It was like marriage counseling the whole time.
Yeah. I love it. And I love what you said about the permanency of it, right? Like, yeah, I'm in the process of writing mine. And that is a very daunting feeling because I have so many thoughts in my head, right? Like you're like, I want to talk about this in this book and I want to do this. And then you're like, okay, I need to make this something that people want to read and also something that's tangible that people want to take home and that also is permanent, like that it has a legacy and that it can, you know, what we call in the world timeless. Like it's not going to be something that in 20 years is not useful anymore. You know that. So what makes it about this book? Like, why did you feel like this book was needed? Why now? And why do you feel like you both needed to write this book?
Yeah, when we thought about a book, there was a couple different routes, and like a lot of our content on the internet is like very playful, lighthearted. It's about like marriage or whatever, parenting, and we're like, okay, well, there's a lot of marriage and parenting books out there. Should we give some like advice book? And it's like we brush that off pretty quickly because we are by no means marriage experts or parenting experts. That's why we're thankful for people like you to help give us really reliable wisdom. And then we're like, okay, well, what do we want to write a book on? It's like, well, we love learning. Curiosity is one of our 5 family values. And it's like, I think it'd be really fun to kind of just do an exploration of a topic and like really dig in, and then just what are the studies and what are other people saying about it? Where do you see it in pop culture? And then the third kind of lens that we aligned, the third Venn diagram circle was like, what would people want to hear from us? And that was like, oh, people love talking to Shawn about our gymnastics career, Dancing with the Stars, and now the marriage and parenting. So then we came up with this, we legitimately took a year to figure out a concept. And we're like, well, we don't want to write a book because we don't want to do a marriage advice book. So we said, maybe we just don't do a book at all. But then as we kind of, would have random conversations, spontaneous conversations around the dinner table about if we were going to do a book, what would it look like? And we realized that a through line through our athletic careers, our marriage, our parenting, and how we have approached business is like this idea of committing to something and sticking to something. And the idea that like the readiness in life does not come before the commitment. It comes as a result of it. And so it was like, oh, that's cool. I think that applies to all these different realms, like those 3 lenses that I mentioned earlier. And so then we kind of mocked up the proposal for it. And we're like, I think we have something here. I think this is really exciting, especially in this time, the day and age that we live in, where people are changing jobs more than they ever have. People are, dating with these like these high
swiping through.
Swipe right culture. And it's like very quick. And oh my gosh, I have so many, there's a lot of choices of people that I can marry. There's a lot of businesses that I could start, and the opportunities, where do I begin? And what we realized is people weren't making mistakes because they chose wrong. They were like, oftentimes, at least in our life, when we made mistakes, it was because we just didn't choose at all. And so the whole moral is like, hey, there may be several good choices, and don't stress out about trying to find the best of the good. You commit to the one, and then you make that one that you chose the best option. So yeah, that's why I feel like it's been a really fun topic to explore.
It is.
You know what's awesome? So I had Alana Myers-Taylor on my show, who won who's like the most decorated Black Winter Olympian. And I love talking to athletes. Like, I love it because I know you said that you're not an expert in parenting and marriage, but there is something to be said. And I obviously, as you all know, I was a high school track athlete. I wasn't anything but I did good work. I was very proud. And I always take it back to the work ethic that I gained by being a track athlete, right? I mean, I hope that my children want to do something in some sort of sport or stick to something that is difficult at times, but test them. And it's a testament to obviously both of you to be able to take the work that you've done as athletes, as parents, being married, and to write this book that, although you say that it's not a parenting book and a marriage book, I think just by sharing the expertise you have as highly trained athletes with strong work ethic and commitment, it's going to be resonating with so many people. And so I think that's a wonderful thing, that this is the book that I think both of you needed to write.
I found it fascinating. We were talking about this the other day, that in culture, it's so widely accepted and known by everybody that to be an elite athlete, you have to devote thousands of hours and time to your craft. And everybody knows that. And everybody is like, yeah, that's how it works. If you want to go to the Olympics, if you want to go to the Super Bowl, you need to be grinding. You even have parents, which don't get me started, who are putting this pressure on children at such a young age, saying you got to commit to it. You got to
get
be
started.
in it. Oh gosh, I could go on a pedestal about that. I should write a book about that.
You should.
Committing for other people's lives, like other people
exactly.
Like, I'm not real sure.
But it's really fascinating to me that people understand commitment. They understand that in order to have an athlete that succeeds, they have to commit to it and they have to go all in. But it's fascinating that they don't believe that in any other category of life. I feel like culture is preaching this idea of, in your relationship, in your business and everything, if it's not a fairy tale and if it's not super easy and it's not butterflies and roses every single day, it must be wrong. And everybody's looking for this quick fix and this hack. And how can I do it? How can I make $1 million in 2 days? And nobody's willing to accept this idea of, we all know how to succeed at something. It's to truly grind in it and to put your nose down and stick with it. And so in writing the book, as athletes, we're kind of showcasing all of our failures and all of our successes and saying look, it's tried and true and it keeps working if we actually just stick with something and we work through the hardships and we work through the valleys. It seems to work out and be so fruitful in the end.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to me why people don't want to see that. It doesn't sound fun, but it actually is more fruitful.
In other areas of life.
In other areas.
It was fun. We did a math exercise where we tried to calculate, in order for Shawn to do a back beam on a flip, how many reps?
A back beam on a flip.
What did I say?
Wow. That was...
What is that? You tell us what that
something new and special. I want to see.
Here we go.
A back flip on a beam. How many repetitions does it take, in the whole build up, the foundational skills to be able to do that? And it was something like 16,000 reps to do that. And it's I think athletics are really helpful in the fact that they're a very tangible thing that you can create analogies out of. And when you have a goal that you're trying to achieve, like a beam on a backflip, kidding. It's okay, well, this is my immovable endpoint that I want to reach. And if I am trying to get there, then there's something that must move in me to achieve that. And instead of me changing my goals or saying, well, I don't want to do this anyway, it's silly. And I know I failed 1,000 times of the 16,000, but maybe I'll just change the goals. It's no, when you have a commitment, that's the thing that doesn't move. And then you're the one who has to make the changes around that and to be able to achieve that. And so it's this really beautiful path to growth, I think. And it's funny, athletics is helpful. I think money can also be a helpful analogy. And people are familiar with this idea of compounding interest, right? In money. It's okay, well, I know that if I save $1 a day for a year, then in 40 years I'll have $1 million or whatever it is. And it's because of the compounding. It's I think that same concept applies to every other area of life. It's hey, how do you have a lifelong marriage? It's, well, you stay married for another day, and then that compounds into this beautiful relationship that otherwise you wouldn't have. Same with friendship, same with business. It's hey, if your immovable thing is that you want to be your own business owner, and that's the goal, then commit to that. And then maybe you have to make some changes along the way and tweak this and edit that and learn this yourself. And there's just a lot of cool things that happen when that's the end goal. And I think, sorry, I'm also a Greek history nerd. I love the Odyssey, Homer's
Oh,
Odyssey.
nice.
There's
Ooh,
actually
yes.
a song that is one of my favorites called Ulysses by Josh Garrels. Anyway, the whole concept is this guy's trying to get home to his family, and he is on a boat, and they have to pass by these sirens, is what they're called, and the sirens are like incredibly tempting. You hear their song, and like it's irresistible. You deviate your path, and they draw you in, and then your ship crashes on the rocks. So it's like this really enticing thing that ends in destruction. And to me, that's like the perfect analogy to distraction, where it's like, oh, hey, I wanted to play in the NFL, but I got enticed by all these other different distractions, the siren song of like whatever, the opportunities that come up, whether it be partying or starting this thing or getting distracted by that. And anyway, Homer, Ulysses' solution is he literally ties himself. He commits so much to getting back to his family that he ties himself to the mast of his ship, and says, "Hey, I'm not going to be. I'm removing myself from the possibility of making any other decision or steering our ship in any other direction than towards home." So anyway, there's my tangent. Thank you for
I also love Greek mythology and all of that. And you must be excited about the movie coming out. I think it's coming out this year, right? Ulysses.
Wait,
I
which
think
one?
it's, yeah. But this is amazing. You talk about narrowing your focus, that it restores peace. You mentioned already earlier that like swipe culture. I agree with that. If someone's listening that's in that dating realm, that does not serve us well, because you are not committing as we had to do back in the day of like, nothing's going to be perfect, right? You have to understand that no human's perfect. You have to understand that no situation's perfect. And then you beautifully said, like, with the temptations of other things when you had a goal of being an NFL player, right?
Yeah.
Like whether it's partying, whether it's some other endeavor.
Yeah.
And in a culture that can feel very much like, like keeping doors open, having a lot of options. What changed for you both when you stopped trying to optimize every choice and instead choose fewer things more fully? Like, how did you decide that this is what my goal is? This is what I'm committing to, so that you can drown out all that other noise and not be tempted, using your analogy, by the sirens?
Yeah. I think for us, it all started, again, I've said this so many times, so forgive me. How many years ago when we did the goal sheet for the first time? 8 years ago?
2018.
2018.
How do you just remember? You got to just
2018.
remember.
I'll never remember that. I'll have to ask him every time about the story. I'd say the first time it kind of hit us was in 2018. We were living a beautiful life. Andrew was bouncing around the NFL. We were living in Washington. We were like saying yes to everything. Every opportunity that came our way, we were having fun. It felt like we were living a beautiful life. But we ended up, we chose to do this goal setting for the very first time. His dad had sent it to him, where we were supposed to sit down. It was like January 1st, stereotypically. And it was, I want you to write down like what your dream life looks like in all of these different categories. And in every category, it was like faith and family and hobbies. And there were like 10 of them. And I remember we sat there for a few hours and we each were writing. And, by the time we got to the end of it, we were sharing with each other. And it was fascinating that the lives that we wanted looked drastically different than the life we were living. And I say that because the choice, component that we're talking about, it's so easy to get wrapped up in saying yes to things that seem fun, but they actually aren't getting you to where you want to go. And so from that point forward, we started implementing strategies to kind of protect our long-term goals. And yes, that means potentially saying no to something that's fun in the moment, but it progresses you closer to like the life you actually want to live. And for us, it actually became more freeing because you get inundated on a daily basis by all these opportunities in life, whether it's with friends or family or kids or whatever it is. But it was so easy to then look through this like lens of that actually doesn't help us in the long run. So that's an easy thing to say no to. And it just made life feel simpler. But because of that, we started becoming like closer in our marriage and better at parenting. And it felt like we were mission oriented and mission aligned in life and not kind of aimlessly wandering around. Things just started to kind of like fall into place easier, I think.
I feel like, yeah, like I feel like I'm curious what one of those examples would be and how you feel like it's showing now in your life. Like, what is one of those goals that you were like not doing initially that now you're like, this is what feels like I was supposed to do?
I mean, I think something as simple as spending time together.
Yeah.
I think one very small thing that we both ended up writing down on our goal sheet is we were so busy in life, we weren't going on dates anymore.
Yeah.
And it was like, we're having fun, we're going to these events, but we actually don't have intentional time together. And that was a very, very easy thing for us to say, let's just choose a day. Let's choose one day every week where we know we're going to go on a date night. And that was the first time we kind of implemented date night, and it stuck, and it was very fruitful for our marriage. And then another one was later on in life. It was the kids watch too much TV. I don't like it. It's kind of distracting. How do we fix that?
And we really value togetherness.
Yeah.
As a family, it's like we want there to be, we want to unlock the probability of there being all those million little moments of like, hey, this might be the moment that is super small, but we'll remember 10 years from now.
Yeah. And it would be like these little things, tiny things in life. Like, that's not a big thing. And we would look at it and say, okay, how can we solve that? And how can we put in a new routine or rhythm in our life to make that feel better? And so they're like little tiny problems that you start fixing. And over the course of time, it just starts recreating your life to be more intentional and purposeful, joyful.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Doc, but because I feel like you doctors are cut from a different cloth, and like I don't
know. Yeah,
I feel like there's this clear calling that I did not have as I was younger, and for me, my 20s felt like a time of like, oh, adventure means not being tied to anything, not having any responsibilities, and being able to do whatever I want to, and like not being committed to anything. The 30s so far has felt like I'm like, okay, we're doing the kid thing. We got some businesses. We're married. We're like committed to a lot of things, some of which maybe we should not be committed to. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm hoping like my 40s will change, and our 40s will change into only being committed to the things that like we really want to be after going through this process of like, experimentation, and then like dipping our toes in, and then realizing, wait, that actually is not where we want to head. But the fun thing is what I realized, and that I wish I could tell my 20-year-old self who was not clear on where he wanted to go, and just wanted adventure, is like, yes, there is a lot of excitement when you go an inch deep and a mile wide. Like there's this excitement that comes from variety, and you're like, oh, I get to sample all these things, and I just get to kind of bounce around freely. But there's a lot of excitement too when you have this depth that you could explore. And like there's a lot of like, just take dating. There is excitement when you go on a date with Susan, and then go on a date with Rebecca, and go on a date with so and so. It's like, oh, different personalities. But as I've gotten to know Shawn, now we're 10 years married, it's like the excitement, and additionally the meaning, because of the depth and the amount of time we've spent together, the amount of shared memories. There's a unmatched level of adventure to like going deep and not wide. And that's just kind of like how we've tried to approach things, where it's like, hey, don't get pulled away from, let's just like dig in and like really get to know each other deeply. So
well, I love the focus on values. I mean, it sounds like that's what that exercise was, that made you realize, what brings me peace in my life? Like, that is what we all should be striving for. And I don't think peace should be money. Like I've said this to my husband, like money will never buy you peace, right? But what can money give you? Maybe it can give you flexibility, which is something you may value. And so to your point, what I had done, which really resonated with me and helped me kind of do what you guys did when you figured out, well, what are we striving for here? Like, are our current actions actually matching what we want in our life? Was I started doing a gratitude jar, and I would put things in my gratitude jar, And I would, at the end of the year, go through them and notice what were the common threads of things that I was grateful for. And through the 3 years that I've been doing this gratitude jar, the same things came up, which I joke about. One of them was being able to take a nap and sleep, which is flexibility, right? Like being
Big
able to
fan of
take a nap
naps.
at like 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, because I have the flexibility to do so. The other one was the flexibility to be able to be with my children because my job allows it to, right? Like I can go to my son's performance at school or do a pickup if I need to and move things around in a schedule. And when I started noticing those threads, just like you both, I start to say, well, how can I continue to live a life of commitment to various projects, various things that will always lead me to those values that I find important? And I think I love that you all did that. I think it's so beautiful to live a value-driven life. And I'm sure it also helps you in your parenting, right? Because parenting comes with endless commentary and judgment. So how would you say that you stay anchored in your values when opinions are loud? Social media is like saying all the things like, don't do this with your children or do this with your children. How do you feel like you're able to model that kind of grounded decision making in your marriage, for your kids, with the principles in the book, or kind of what we just said?
I would say the first thing that comes to mind is like the strategy we have in place helps us
Yeah.
protect that. Similar to what you were saying with like the gratitude jar, there's so many things that we've implemented into our daily lives that protect us from outside voices and like changing our routine. And we've learned all of these little things over the course of the past 10 years. We have had the privilege of, I feel like we learned firsthand in athletics that having really good coaches can change your entire trajectory in your life. And so, even in our marriage and in parenting, we have spent a lot of resources to go find the best coaches in the world to kind of help us hone in on how to have a better and more intentional life. And within the book, that was the fun part, is we've always tried to explain everything that we've done and all the um, little, like, not activities, but like things that we do that we've implemented.
Processes and
Processes,
stuff.
yes, for learning your values and how to protect them. And in our book, we actually walk through every single one of them. And I could give you a laundry list of things, but protecting, date nights, and we do monthly check-ins, and we do this values-based kind of process once a year where we're making sure our values are aligned as a family. And there's so many intentional things that we do that kind of protects our life and makes it feel, yeah, like we're doing it for us and not for the world.
Yeah.
And that can be so hard with it being a public figure, right? Like for
Yeah.
both of you, right? Because I know this being on social, and I think I'm so proud of you all, because that to me is why I feel like you both are very grounded, because you figure that out, right? I think a
Yeah.
lot of people who are not grounded in what they're doing have not figured out that equation of how can I be a public figure, take all the stuff that comes with that, but also know that the most important people in my life, and Andrew, you said it, is my family, right? Spending time with them. Shawn, I loved, I follow you. So you guys had gone on a trip and you had posted like something on your stories about like how grateful you are to just travel with the kids. And like
Mhm.
as they get older, I know those memories are even more amazing, because they remember it. And I just again thought about how relatable that is as a mother myself, and how much I love being able to take my kids places, whether it's a weekend locally, whether it's across the country, across the world, to the Olympics. That is so awesome that I get to see that and see that you do that. And it's just nice to see you both as impressive public figures who are building, you're entrepreneurs, you obviously are former athletes, feel so aligned because you really have been diligent. And it's a good reminder for all of our listeners that this is not just coming out of the air. This is by design. This is by conversation that you all have. This is with intention. And I feel like, to your point earlier, I feel a lot of people don't realize that to commit, it requires a lot of intention and thought. It's not just like you commit and then there's no thought to it. And do you feel that to be true? Like there's a lot of checking in with each other, checking in with yourself to kind of see, is this commitment what I want to do? Are we going to pivot? Like, how does that look like in terms of realizing, sort of reevaluating what's working and what's not working for you individually or for your family?
Yeah, 100% commitment does take a lot of maintenance, whether it be in athletics or relationships or whatever. And I would just argue that the cost of maintenance is less than the cost of starting over, it's less than the startup cost. So like what I realized, maybe, not as soon as I would have liked in our marriage, is here I was spending a lot of time trying to strategize my ambitions, trying to be strategic in business. And I was applying very little of that like strategy side of my brain to our marriage, and like game planning. Hey, here's where we're going to have our meetings, our touch bases. Here's when we're going to explore, like, what are we actually about? What are we trying to build here? And obviously, it's a way different tone and style conversation that you have at home versus business. But I think still the intentionality, the engagement, the time, the way your schedule reflects it, there's a lot of carryover that you can learn, and being strategic at home. And we get some pushback. People are like, well, do you ever feel like you're being too rigid, and like there's not this whimsical romance that you can have with all these processes and systems? And I just know that for me, I resort and kind of regress towards being irresponsible with my time when I'm not intentional with it. So I'll pull up my phone and go social media, or do watch Netflix or whatever. And it's like, I would way rather be strategic and intentional with how I'm building my relationship, the most important relationship in my life, than just like leaving it up to chance. And the romance happens, and I feel like us giving it time on our schedule gives the romance a probability of happening. These really fun conversations, or the laughs, the tears, or whatever. And it we walk through our whole process of, like Shawn said, a lot of the different things that we do. One of those is the values, and we realized that we had these values for our business. And I kept hearing from mentors in that space that, like, you got to know what your organization is about. And we did not know what our family was about, but we realized that we each had certain things that would rub us the wrong way or annoy us, and we couldn't really put a finger on why that would be. And so we went through this whole system that we share in the book of like, what are our personal values?
Mm-hmm.
What are the things, like, where do we feel most comfortable, like we're thriving? Where do we feel frustrated at times? And then like you come up with trends and patterns for that, and you're able to kind of like whittle those down. And then we came up with, like, based off of our personal values through that system, an operating system for our family on how we operate. And you asked earlier, like, what does committing do for you? And I think it has allowed us to drown out the noise, and like you said, narrow your focus. That brings a sense of calmness where you're not anxiously feeling FOMO, of like, am I doing it the right way? It's like, no, we're being intentional in doing it this way. And there is a sense of like peace that comes with that. There's like this joy that you're able to unlock because you're just present, and you're not looking over the fence, seeing if the grass is greener. You're just like taking care of your own. And then there's this depth that you're able to lock in on and focus on. And so for us, it's been incredibly helpful. And like Shawn said, we do have mentors that, as you're deciding what to commit to or who to commit to, like getting outside perspectives from people who are further along the path than you, and can add in, hey, I've been doing this for 20 years. You're on year one. Here's some things to look out for. Can be really helpful. And so, you obviously don't know what you're getting into with any commitment, like what the next 20 years could look like. There's going to be struggles and celebrations that you could never imagine. But if you're just like locked in on it, then you just realize like, hey, this is all part of the journey, and that's what makes it fun. So
I feel the same way about the book writing process. I mean, speaking about the fact that y'all wrote a book, like when I started writing my book, it's obviously a new era form of media for me, right? And I'm like, we talked about, it's so easy. It seems easy to do the YouTubes and the social, those can be edited. And now you're like, wow, this is really permanent. And finding, again, those mentors in that space of like, hey, this is what it looks like. This is what it can be. You have to really love talking about this topic for the next couple of years, because this is what people are going to ask you about, right? Commitment. And I love that we can talk about this for so long, because again, I'm already getting so many pearls of like, how this is transcending into every aspect of your life, like I mentioned. And one thing that really, I think, Shawn, you're the one who mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, was about people don't always realize the valleys that happen to become successful, right? People see the glamour. They see you get the gold medal. They see you land the landing, doing a back beam on a flip, right? Like they see all of that. I hope you all got that reference.
I did.
But from Olympic competition to NFL careers to building a family in the public eye, you write that commitment is not about avoiding failure, but staying present through it. So how has your relationship with failure changed through your life individually? And how does that shape the way you want your kids to view mistakes and failure?
I think one of the greatest gifts I was ever given very early on in my life was in gymnastics, where my coach told me that I had to fail and fall literally flat on my face 1,000 times before I would ever, get one skill right. And he taught me at a very young age, just this gift of he celebrated failure. He was like, if you're not failing, you're not trying. And you have to fail and you have to try in order to ever be good at this. And again, I think our culture is so used to that narrative in sports, and everyone widely accepts that. And they're like, yeah, I mean, she gave up when it got hard. She didn't make it. That's why. It makes so much sense to people. But then why can we not translate that into every other, area of our life? And I think for us, we have a lot of people in a very odd way who are always saying, how can I get a marriage like yours? If only I could just find the right person, then it would be like that. And we're just here to kind of prove that in our book in all these areas and categories that it's because we worked through failure. It's because on the days that felt so incredibly hard, and the days where we actually
yesterday,
literally, where we actually couldn't handle it. Yes, felt like we actually couldn't handle it ourselves, and we had to go outsource more coaches and more help. And like, it's because we aren't afraid to fail and to try that we've seen so much just success in each area. And I think for our children, I just want to teach them that our culture is saying that failure is bad. And the culture tries to paint it as like, you should be embarrassed by it. And it should be, if you actually find your gift, it should be easy and you won't fall at all. And, cancel culture is such a toxic thing because you're not allowed to fail at anything. There's no redemption and and I think what I just genuinely want this book to convey and what we teach our children is like what I was taught as a child. Failure is a part of life. And if you can accept that and have grace for someone else in that, you can build a beautiful life that actually is more meaningful because you felt what it felt like to fail and you pushed through it. And now you get to feel the feeling of success.
Yeah. I'll never forget.
Andrew,
we got to interview Aloe Black, who did the "Wake Me Up" song with Avicii, we asked him, "Hey, are you going to get your kids into music?" And he was like, "Absolutely, I will get my kids into music because just like a farmer used to teach their kids farming, I will teach my kids music because it's a thing that I know better than anything else. And if I'm able to teach them this one thing in that process of like." If you learn how to do anything, you learn how to do everything really well. So I just, it's like, there's, if you go deep enough down the path, you can benefit in all areas of your life, regardless of how similar they may feel. But I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, I really appreciate your beautiful words about failure. I resonate so deeply because I feel like our generation, I think we've done such a great job of parenting children with more emotional intelligence and things like this, but we still are very afraid of our kids failing. And I thought that would be one thing that we would change cultures on. And Andrew, you brought up earlier how, you were talking to me about being a doctor and how, my 20s was very diligent as to compared to yours, which was not, right? But the problem that I will admit is that I was not raised with failure being an option. It was not part of my raising. And a lot of my peers who go into medicine also had that same mentality because if you study and you get the grades, you have the result, you get into medical school. There was no failure along the way, right? Like you just do your work. There was no risk taking involved. And it wasn't until I started Peds Doc Talk that I started to see that it's not always perfect, because this is now when I became an entrepreneur and I was like, well, now what am I doing for revenue? What am I doing here? How come I'm not getting views here? And it was a rude awakening to get comfortable with not always having things work out my way And that was a really important life lesson. And you both have brought up these beautiful words of peace. And, you just feel lighter. Like you feel those words really resonate with me, because when I started to accept failure, when I start to say, I'm still worthy, despite the fact that I may not be perfect right now, was when I started to feel lighter and feel peace again in my life. And it's also when things just started to align better. Like you both have said, like, I do agree with you that things start going into place, right? Like whatever you believe in, whether it's God, whether it's the universe, whatever it is, things start aligning. The puzzle pieces start coming together when you're very clear on what you want, when you are working hard to get there and you believe that it's possible. And I think a lot of people forget that manifestation is not just thinking something's going to happen, it's being realistic, but also putting the work ethic in and saying, I'm going to work hard because I'm very aligned and know that I want to write this book. I know that I want my marriage to work. But if you're wishy-washy on that, of course it's not going to work. Like, I love that you are very transparent about marriage being hard, because my husband and I always talk about it together. He's not as he doesn't like to be on social as much. And I'm trying to encourage him, because I think as a male, and Andrew, this is a testament to you, it is so important for other males to hear what you have to say, that marriage is hard. I am working with my wife to figure out what to do, because sometimes the culture is that it's the women's job, it's the women to do this. And you are really changing the narrative on this sort of mutual respect in marriage. And it's not machismo, it's marriage. It's two people coming together. And so I applaud you both, because I think it's such an important thing that we need to be teaching each other, but also your kids are leading by your example. And, you both have boys and girls. It's so awesome that they get to experience dad who's supportive, mom who's supportive, healthy communication. I'm sure you guys have had arguments in front of your kids, but healthy repair in front of the children. And from a parenting lens, how powerful it is for children to see that in their parents, that not everything is roses and butterflies, but mommy and daddy will make things work, and we want to try to make things work. And that's how they're going to treat their future partners. And that's such a beautiful gift that you're going to leave them. I think that's wonderful.
Thank you.
I know this is turning into like a love sesh on you guys, but like it really is. Like, your book is really something that I think is important. And, you also in the book make an important distinction between perseverance and quitting, like that balance of like, when do you say that I'm going to stay with something because it matters? And when do you say it's not for me anymore? Like, do you have any tips on that? Do you have that in the book on someone who's like, I don't know, like, or maybe for your children, like, has that come up where you're like, they're interested in something and you're like, how much do I push and how much do I say, okay, let's stop?
It is a chapter in the book, and it was one of the hardest ones to write, because you're right. And we've gone through it as well. There is a line there where if something doesn't fit, like, pruning things in your life is really, really important. And in pruning things out of your life, you actually can commit more to things that are better and that you enjoy more. With our children, I think we're learning that firsthand. How do you teach that? Because it's not important to stick with something for life because you just have to stick with it for life. You actually need to find like a compatibility there with your interests and your values and something. But I do think, in the way we write it in the book, is like there is a process that you need to go through to make sure that you aren't just quitting because it's difficult. You're not quitting because you're frustrated. You're not quitting because the world has said that's not the cool thing to do. Like there is a system in line of doing a gut check of why you're quitting it, why you started it, and your reasons for it. And I think that's the hard part as a parent to teach a kid, because you want to teach perseverance, you want to teach grit, you want to teach them how to commit to something long term and work through hardship. But you also need to understand and teach them as well, if this isn't your thing, that's okay too. So to give you an answer, it's kind of vague. You have to process a lot of and do a lot of self-reflection on what to stick with and what not to. But we did spend probably 6 months on that chapter alone, trying to make sure we spelled it out in a way that makes the most sense.
Yeah. And this is where having a coach or mentor to help provide perspective can be helpful too. Like, hey, I'll never forget. I had a baseball coach in high school who was like, hey, you could play freshman year ball And you're doing a great job. I was a freshman at the time. You're doing a great job as a freshman. I think probably you have a better future playing football. And like, there's two ways you could take that.
Yeah.
One, I'm going to use it as fuel and motivation,
Yeah.
which I did whenever someone doubted me in football. But two, you could say, oh, this is like, that's wisdom. But like, kind of just like seeking other perspective can be super helpful, because you don't want it to be a spur of the moment, like, oh, I'm annoyed and I didn't start, and so I'm going to transfer schools. You're like, no, maybe there's some growth left here, so let's stick with it and see what happens.
Yeah.
Shawn, in gymnastics, like when you were younger, how old were you when you started being a more, I guess, competitive gymnast? Like, meaning you realized that you were like, okay, I love this, I'm good at it. Well, how old were you at that point?
I mean, for reference, I made the USA national team at 12.
Yeah.
So I'd say around
what would
8,
you
9,
say,
10.
I don't know if you can remember back in that time when you wanted to quit, I'm sure there was moments where you wanted to quit, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What made you not quit? I'm actually just curious from your gymnast perspective. Like, what was it that kept saying to you, like, I want to keep coming back? Was it the teacher that taught you about failure, or was it something else that just kept coming back to you?
I actually write these stories in the book, which is fascinating to kind of dissect. But my coach had a very interesting system. And I don't want to get too long-winded here, but whenever I would come to him and I would say, yep, this is it. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Don't have the interest. He would respond the same way every time. He'd be like, great. Cool. And it was like, no emotion involved. I'm so excited for you. What are you going to go do? And it was almost this reverse psychology that I think even us adults need, to where he so clearly made it not about anybody else but me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? In the sense of, I almost felt like if I went to someone and said, I want to quit, they'd be like, no, don't do that. You're so good. You've invested so much. I love watching you. Your parents love watching you. Your teammates need you. I was expecting that. And so when someone so quickly is like, great, move on. I don't care. It doesn't affect me. It makes you reflect on the inside. Oh, shoot, this is actually my choice. You're not going to persuade me. You're not going to make me do it. And the system that we had in place was he would always be like, great, cool. Don't come back to practice tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we had this system where he would say, take a day. After a day, come back to the gym and tell me how you feel.
Yeah.
And I would take a day. And then if I made it the day, he'd say, great, take a week. Come back and tell me what you're going to go try. And I never made it past the one day. Because in that one day, I'd be like, you know what? This is actually what I love. This is what I want to do. Now that it seems like nobody else cares. But it was a really good way to reflect on, if it doesn't affect anyone else, right? Then what is it that I want? And it's just, you got to think about it. I got to do a lot of self-reflection, and that can not be fun sometimes, but I think if you want an intentional life, you need to.
Yeah. And I think reverse psychology is the underrated way to communicate. Like, it gets a lot of bad rap, but it actually, like, again, very stoic, like, turn it back on you. I mean, that is it. I really appreciate that, because I also think about that with our children, right? Like, we tend to want to fix things for them. We tend to want to say, well, you don't, exactly what you said, right?
Yeah.
You're amazing, but sweetie. But when you just say, okay, like, they're like, it really puts them in a space of, like, especially for a 12-year-old or like any kid who's over 10, to be like, oh, okay, like, my mom doesn't care, like, then I'm going to make a choice here. I think it's beautiful. And my last question, we could talk about this all day, and I think you guys did pick a good topic that you could talk about for years with this book, is how you kind of navigate the not so glamorous moments, right, with commitment. So thinking about parenting, right? It's showing up tired, repeating yourself all the time, coming back, repairing after hard days. So what does commitment look like for you both in the small, unglamorous parts of whether it's parenting life, family life, marriage? And what do you want parents to hear when they feel worn down but have to still show up?
Man, that's kind of the good part, right? Like if you're able to find joy and contentment in those mundane moments, I think that's almost like the key to life. If you see the beauty and the meaning in, hey, I know I've not taking any glamorous trips the last 2 years of my life. And I know that, there's a lot of other people doing a lot more exciting things, but I've spent the 2 years of my life with this child, and I've seen these beautiful day changes, these little micro changes of yesterday they didn't smile and today I got a smirk, or yesterday they couldn't say, they were saying aminals instead of animals, and then today they changed it to animals and they got that right. And those little moments, like, that are not glamorous, if you're able to appreciate those, then you can, it's a beautiful life. There's so much color. And like, there's a lot of examples of things not being exciting, but that's the important part, is just continuing to show up. The practice is, for football, we would have 9 months of practice and then 3 months of actual season, like where the games and the lights and the fancy highlight tapes are made. But if you don't do the 9 months, you don't get the 3. And so it's just seeing the long game and being able to zoom out and say, okay, I am building towards something, and this is a season that is preparing me for the next. And those are important. So stick with them and know that it's a preparation phase.
I would also add, similar to what we spoke about earlier, it's incredibly humbling as a parent, because you're the parent.
Yeah.
To say sorry. But I think, again, one of the greatest gifts I was given was a celebration of failure. I want my kids to constantly see me trying. And if that means for 12 days in a row, I'm saying, you know what, I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
But I'm going to try harder tomorrow, and I'm going to try for you again tomorrow. I think teaching your children the celebration of trying is one of the greatest things you can do.
Oh, I'm getting a little teary-eyed. I have to say, one, because I know I told you this at the beginning, but I know you all said that you're not marriage coaches, you're not parenting coaches, but this book is really needed. It really is a powerful testament to the work that you've done, not only in your adult life, but obviously all the little pieces that have brought you to this moment to write this book. And I really appreciate that. It resonates so deeply. I love being connected with you all. Like, when I look at my ecosystem of like who's in my team, right? Like on social media, and like Shawn, when we met the other time and you just shared some feedback on like PR agencies and things like that. Your message of like having the right people in your network, the coaches in your life, it doesn't have to be grand. It can be someone like you are to me with that whole PR question that I had for you, like how do you navigate that? I really want to thank you both, not only for joining me today, but also being vulnerable, for also just sharing your truth. It means so much to me. And I cannot wait for people to get this book, because I just feel it is very needed. And not only for a parent, but for someone who's just struggling with all of those decisions in life, to really find more clarity, and using that word beautifully again, just find more peace. Because when I talk to you both, I just feel peace. I feel that there's anchoring in this world. I feel that you both have direction, and that is just a beautiful thing to be surrounded by. And I'm sure you have worked so hard to get to that point. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Doc. You've been incredibly gracious to us and forgiving, and we've been through quite a lot together over the last couple of years.
You've helped us do some of the weirdest medical things that parents don't normally go through.
So Shawn and I were talking about this, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, how your approach is so non-judgmental, and it's like it's understanding, and it's very balanced, and that's really helpful in a time period where it feels like every decision is so high stakes, and oh my gosh, I'm gonna mess my kid up if I don't do XYZ. You just have a little more of a an easygoing, approachable way of doing things. So thank you.
Truly. I cannot wait for people to get this book. Tell our listeners where they can go to get the book, when it's out, how to stay connected with both of you all, your social handles. I'll be adding all of that, of course, to the show notes.
Yeah, it's called The Courage to Commit. You can find it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. You can go to thecouragetocommit.com, and there's a link to all the different storefronts that you can get it at. And we're doing an Audible reading too. Yeah. So
love it.
If our voice, it doesn't annoy you can check that out. But it's been a blast to write. So hope you check it out.
Yes. And then I will be attaching their Instagram handles if you're not following along already. And I've said this quite frankly, I am very particular on who I follow on social media. I don't just follow to follow. I'm very intentional, and I love to follow people who have this sort of value system, right? Authentic, relatable, fun, but also understands that life isn't always roses and butterflies. And Shawn and Andrew, you are those people. Thank you so much for joining me today again.
Thanks for having us, Doc.
Good to see you.
And for everyone tuning in, I'm sure you love this episode. Please make sure you hit that thumbs up sign, comment in the comment section on things that resonated with you from this conversation. And also, if you got the book, which I hope you did, things that you loved about the book. And I cannot wait to chat with them next time and have more amazing guests on the show.